Hello and welcome to today's Supply Chain Management Review podcast. My name is Michael Levins, and of course, I'm Group Editorial Director for Peerless Media's Supply Chain Group, which includes Supply Chain Management Review magazine. And I'll be your moderator for today's episode, where we're going to help supply chain professionals overseeing procurement operations. We're going to help them how to master the balance of cost, resilience, and sustainability in supply chains. Now, I don't think I have to remind anyone joining us today, supply chain and procurement has been thrust into the spotlight since the pandemic, and we continue to face unprecedented challenges from geopolitical upheavals and, of course, climate crises. And it seems like we have disruptions day in and day out. Now, indeed, navigating these turbulent waters demands a delicate balance between controlling cost, ensuring resilience, and meeting rigorous ESG regulations that complicate data collecting and reporting. Now, today, we're going to explore the intricate dance of managing these three critical elements, and we're going to offer some insight, strategies, and technologies that are reshaping the landscape of supply chain management, ensuring that organizations can thrive amid constant change. Now, to walk us through this journey to achieve this perfect balance of those three elements, we're joined by Georg Roesch, and Georg is Vice President, Direct Procurement Strategy at JAGGAER, a software company that specializes in procurement and spend management solutions. Georg, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, Georg, let's start by kind of setting the table here, right? We like to start by giving that big 30,000 foot view and take a snapshot of today's current environment. Let's see if we can put this all in perspective. Now, I made a quick mention of the global, geopolitical issues we're seeing, the impact climate is having on shipping lanes in some areas, and now labor negotiation talks have stalled on the East and Gulf Coast ports here in the States. It feels as if supply chain managers, really can't catch a break. From your unique position of working with some of these professionals in the front line of supply chain and procurement, how would you define the current supply chain environment here in the middle of 2024?
Well, I would say realities have changed, and we can all see this now,
Hmm.
right? So I believe it's very different in our field than it was like 5 years ago. I mean,
Hmm.
it's what some people call like a poly crisis. So it's basically
Right.
one crisis after another.
Hmm.
We don't seem to catch a break, and this has a profound impact on professionals in our industry, how we work, and how we run our businesses. So
Hmm.
when I look at it, I believe it's fair to say that procurement was even incentivized in the past to
Yep.
focus on cost savings. I
Yeah.
believe that's fair.
Yep.
And I see a change in that as people now see that only focusing on cost is very short sighted. And
Hmm.
we ran our supply chains on a couple of premises that are not true any longer, and
Hmm.
therefore we also need to change how we run those businesses and how we think about these processes. So,
Yeah.
and this has a yeah, a profound impact, I would say, on especially like coming from the procurement angle here on procurement teams, as they don't want to be the order takers anymore,
Right.
that take the orders, run with it, negotiate prices, and so on. There is a lot of extended responsibilities that
Hmm.
came across these supply chain and procurement teams.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm sure we're going to dive into more details about like the ESG related stuff and how to build
Absolutely.
a resilient or anti-fragile, or however you want to call it, supply chain. But that's really what I'm seeing is a
Yep.
shift in how you must run your business and
Right.
look beyond cost from a
Right.
procurement perspective.
Right. Well, Georg, now let's take that in perspective a little bit here in terms of challenges, right? There's a profound shift, which you just mentioned. All the disruptions where we're seeing, it's now part of our day-to-day environment. With this new reality that you just defined, and now that we better understand, what would you say inside this environment now, this new reality? What would you say are a few of the biggest challenges facing procurement professionals today due to this?
So what I'm seeing is there is a lot of new requirements that teams need to fulfill. Okay,
Hmm.
so as you said before, cost, yes, it's still there, it's still important. We need to focus on it,
Yep.
but it's also how can I become more resilient, or how
Hmm.
can I be more apt to managing risk, and
Hmm.
also how can I look at sustainability.
Right.
I'm seeing this as more and more requirements that come to these teams, but I don't see those teams getting any bigger.
Right,
Okay.
right,
So,
exactly.
so how do you do this? So how can you actually do more with less? And this is
Right,
where I believe technology comes into play and help you do this. So the work isn't done by itself, or there's no computer out there doing the work for you.
right,
Sorry if that's the expectations.
right, exactly.
That's not it.
Yep.
But you will need a lot of technology support to run these processes efficiently. And I believe that's really what's happening right now in the shift
Right.
that we're all seeing.
Absolutely. So great. So let's dive into this, a solution or a way of approaching a solution for procurement professionals, to meet the challenges you just neatly defined there. And that was terrific. Now you've mentioned achieving a delicate balance, mastering the balance of cost, resilience, sustainability regulations, right? So let's dive into some of that. Let's break these down. In terms of cost management, then, what is the most important element that needs to be achieved on the way to successfully controlling costs? And then maybe we can talk about, and then we can get into the software as well that's making that happen. But what are some of the most important elements that need to be achieved now?
So when you think about cost management, this is not like a very simple buyer's market at the moment.
Right,
It's pretty much a
right,
seller's market, and there is a lot of like cost that comes upon the organization that you haven't thought of
right,
before. So
right.
just think about like inflation. Think
Mm-hmm,
about interest rates. All
mm-hmm,
of this has a very negative impact on the buying organizations right now, because
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
not just the stuff that you or the decisions that you make right now are impacted by this, but also the decisions that you made like a year ago are impacted by this
Mm-hmm,
negatively, right?
mm-hmm.
So you need to be well aware of what's happening, and you need to act fast. So
Right.
what I believe is one of the key drivers right now is to have a very good overview of what I call the market intelligence. So you
Mm-hmm,
need to be on top of your markets. You need to know your indices and everything.
mm-hmm.
And when you see an angle of attack, yeah, if I can use that reference
Sure.
here, is
Yep.
you need to act fast. So you need
Mm-hmm.
to plan for this, and you need to act fast. So you need to be able to capitalize on every single opportunity as soon as it arises.
Right, right, right. So, Georg, procurement software is always, prioritize that cost efficiency, right? But has this focus intensified in today's volatile market? And if so, why and how is it different from the past? How has software's role changed?
I believe this has to do with the other topics that we would like to talk about later on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is I think it needs to shift away a little bit from this procurement is just like the tough negotiator and gives you like the lower prices, because
Sure.
price alone, or let's call it the purchase price of the product that you're buying,
Mm-hmm.
actually a pretty small percentage of your total costs that you
Right,
have.
right, right.
So having a better understanding of your total costs, or how we call it, even like the total value of what you're buying. It's not
Yep.
everything is not just cost related. You
Right.
need to have a very good understanding of these items to really make the best value decision. I believe that's really what procurement teams should be doing
Yep.
these days.
Yep. Now, and we did mention, resiliency, that second element here that we were talking about. Now, during and in the years following the pandemic, there's been a lot of chatter around resiliency and agility among, chief supply chain officers and procurement professionals. Now, what role do you see technology playing in building robust supply chains that can withstand the ongoing disruptions?
Yeah. Let me first define the market that we're in and how it's separated, and then I
Hmm.
will I will it will be clear why I'm doing
Absolutely. Yep.
that. So you can usually divide what we are doing into two different pieces within procurement, right? You have source to contract, and you have
Hmm.
procure to pay. The one is the more of a strategic nature of who are my sources, what
Hmm.
information do I need, who do I want to contract with, and so on. And then you have the procure to pay, which is more the execution piece of everything.
Hmm.
Both are super important, but when it comes to building up a resilient supply chain, the execution is too late. So you
Hmm.
need to do this beforehand. I can monitor what's going on, and hopefully I have plans in place what to do if something goes wrong.
Right.
But in order to build up a resilient supply chain, you must start at the strategic end, which is the source to contract process.
Right. Right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Think about it from a manufacturer's perspective. We
Hmm.
are very big advocates here at Jagger of bringing procurement in very early in the new product introduction cycle. Okay?
Hmm.
Because then you have the longest lever basically of influencing everything that's needed from cost to resilience to sustainability.
Hmm.
And from a resilience perspective, you will need a lot of data. Okay, coming
Yep.
back to this market intelligence we were talking about before, there is a
Hmm.
ton of data you will need. There is supply chain risk information, financial risk information, there is weather information, whatnot. Like all of these different things you need to have in consideration.
Hmm.
And what our job is as a procurement software vendor is surface this information every time the buyer makes a decision. This can be
Hmm.
an awarding decision. This can be selecting who are my approved or preferred suppliers in a certain category to going forward for bundling to come back to my like being cost effective and everything.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's really where I'm seeing a lot of the effort going. And
Yep.
let's not forget what I like to call those intelligent agents, as most of you will call it like AI under
Yep.
air quotes here.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of use of new technology, of recommending things, of finding patterns, and so on to really help the buyer in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now let's roll into that final element here, that sustainability element that we mentioned in the at the intro here. Now, sustainability is another important area that comes in and out of supply chain discussion over the years, right? We've been in the market a long time. We've seen it come in and out, and the
Yeah.
concept of sustainability has become somewhat of a sort of a catch-all term, right? So, from your perspective, what does it truly encompass in the context of supply chain and procurement, and how can organizations effectively address these demands of sustainability?
So I mean, personally, I really like the when we define it as ESG. I believe that's the best
Yep.
term to use here,
Hmm.
and not use like just sustainability, which is like a
Right.
catch-all term, as you just mentioned. But it's
Yep.
like environmental, social, and governance. I believe these are the
Hmm.
three things. To be very fair, many organizations are very afraid of these things,
Yeah.
and just think about let's start with our environmental at first.
Hmm.
If something is green, it's
Hmm.
supposed to be more expensive
Right.
immediately because it's green, right? So
Right.
that's
Right.
kind of like the market approach to it. While in reality, it's exactly the opposite. That
Hmm.
should be true. When you think about it, being environmentally friendly means using less resources. Usually, using less of something
Right.
means it costs less. The
Right.
thing is, it's sold as a value add, and therefore it's more expensive. And
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, there is usually an upfront investment that needs to be made, but in the end, it's using less resources.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
I
Yep.
found like a study from 2015 where it was already mentioned the positive impact this has on organizations on their company value, right? So
Hmm.
focusing on ESG is 63% positive for your organization and only 8% negative.
Right.
So there's really like from an NPS perspective, net promoter score, if you sum this up, it's 55% positive or 55 NPS score, which is amazing from a positivity here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but how do you actually work with this? Um, there is the lowest level is simply compliance, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you need to fulfill this in order to comply with laws, rules, regulations that you have throughout the world. Think about UFLPA in the US or CSDDD in Europe or something like
Hmm.
that. And then on the environmental side, you have more and more carbon taxes out there. So soon there will be not a discussion of, oh, it does so and so many CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, but what does this cost me? Because there is a taxing involved with it,
Right.
which
Right.
honestly makes it even easier for procurement because then we can talk about dollar values again and
Right.
not something
Exactly.
as abstract as CO2 emissions.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Now, Georg, let's roll these three elements up. Now, what would you say are the ultimate benefits a supply chain and procurement operation will realize once you've mastered the balance of these three elements, right? What does it look like? What does it act like when the balance is achieved and mastered? When you have the cost management, resiliency, and sustainability sort of in balance that we've kind of set up here. What does it feel like? Look like? What's the ultimate benefit there?
Huh. I would like to turn this around, though, if you don't mind,
Sure,
because
no
I
problem.
believe you must bring this into balance for your organizations, because otherwise, if something falls off the table, there will be a problem for you as an organization.
Right,
Okay,
right. Yep.
so I believe it's absolutely important that you do this, but you need to optimize for what's the right formula for you. And that's different on the type of industry that you're in.
Yep.
It's different even for the type of category that you're buying in. Because if you buy in a standard product and so on, it's probably more cost focused. In some other areas where it's highly about innovation, cost is
Hmm.
probably less of a thing, but you just need those products for your product to function or for your product to work. So
Right.
that's really the key of everything, is finding the right balance for
Hmm.
your industry, your
Right.
market, your category that you're buying. And that's, I believe, the winning formula of being aware of where and how this needs to be done for you.
I got you. That makes sense. So that kind of rolls into our wrap up here. We are up against the clock, Georg. So I just wanted to kind of go out on a limb here and to say there are a number of procurement professionals, SCMR readers who are listening today that are feeling the pressure and want to step up right towards achieving this balance. So it sounds like that's a great sort of bit of advice you might want to let them, leave them with today. What's that one piece of advice you have for them to start this journey? Would it be, understanding your specific situation and which one of these elements would match up best with that? Is that where you start or
Exactly. Know your products, know your
Yep.
market, know your customers, and find the right balance for you. So we should all be realistic here and not just be like, yeah, everything needs to be green and everything needs to be super sustainable.
Yep.
This all needs to be in line with a whole business context. And
Right.
the same is true for resilience. Maybe you're okay with some outage here and there in one area, but not in another. And
Hmm.
this is what you need to be cognizant of.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are up against the clock. Georg Roesch, Vice President, Direct Procurement Strategy at JAGGAER, a software company that specializes in procurement and spend management solutions. Georg, terrific job. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Wonderful to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks again. And I want to thank everybody for listening, and everybody have a terrific day. Thank you so much.